she was right. She's a few more senseless rants away from becoming the new crazy Congresswoman Maxine Waters. Why do you seem to only sound the national alarm about the United States military when it suits your anti-Trump narrative? Same question goes to the rest of those in Hollywood, in Congress, in the media. Y'all didn't care when President Obama, Susan Rice, and Hillary Clinton lied to the families of our Benghazi warriors, telling them the terror attack was because of a YouTube video, a total lie. Why didn't you speak out then? Furthermore, most of you have spent the last month or more insisting the national anthem and American flag don't mean much. You've held these whiny NFL kneelers on a social justice pedestal for disrespecting the military, our veterans, and our country, but are now concerned and enraged by Trump's tone on an overheard speakerphone call? Get a grip. Our president loves and respects the military. That's why he called Maisha Johnson. The fact some are twisting this into another attack on the president is sick and wrong. Johnson family, thank you for the service and sacrifice of U.S. Army Sergeant Johnson. May he rest in peace. Those are my final thoughts. From L.A., God bless.
Check out the Territorial Dispatch. Papers are weekly and can be obtained free at distribution or by mail through subscription. It's the only locally owned and operated newspaper in the region. The paper is the rest of the story. And also check out the E-Territorial. It's an online version of the Territorial Dispatch which features local news and events for the Yuba Sutter, Colusa, and Nevada County areas. You'll also find daily and breaking news updates, current traffic, and weather information, along with a calendar of local events. Visit the E-Territorial at eterritorial.com.
The Nate Black Hour.
Well, good morning, Yuba Sutter, Nevada, YOLO,
Under the
Colusa,
bus. Under the
Butte.
bus.
Hello, everybody. Nate Black, Sutter County Auditor Controller. Good to be with you this morning, and nice and breezy, or chilly, I should say, out there. I'm looking forward to the fall and winter. So, with that, what do we have to look forward to here in the fall? Well, I talked a little bit last weekend that this coming Tuesday was a big agenda item. Actually, there's a few big agenda items in Sutter County, and I'm referring to the Board of Supervisors agenda. So at 3 p.m. on Tuesday, I anticipate it's going to be quite a board meeting with so many issues. And so the one issue that I wanted to speak to a little bit this morning was staff report by the county administrative officer regarding a homeless management plan. And this issue it's charged, I think, it's a charged issue in the community right now for a variety of reasons. And kind of everybody has what is important to them. And so I'm going to take the angle from a fiscal and risk management standpoint, as that I feel is the most appropriate for my office and for what I try to bring here on the radio in the morning. So, in other words, I'm going to try to stay away from any of my personal opinions on the matter and just stick to my concerns from a professional and accountant standpoint, and in that way try to stay above the fray.
That's your responsibility. People don't realize that when you assume an office, especially an office that has its hands on so much of their money, the taxpayers' money, you have a fiduciary, what's known as a fiduciary responsibility to the best you can, and not from your viewpoint, but from a taxpayer viewpoint. Do the best you can for that taxpayer, and that's so important that people realize that there are honest people in the government. They're just few and far between because you're one of the few that hasn't believed his own press releases, and concern yourself. The most oppressed minority in the history of the world has been the American taxpayer, and Nate brings out so much about it. But go ahead,
and Nate. still are the most oppressed. So with that, thank you, Andy. With that, we're going to talk about the fiscal angles here, and most significantly, I feel it has to do with risk management and what are the risks associated with this. So let's kind of walk through it, and we'll see how much time we have today, and see if I need to get into any of the back and forth from this week that I had with the county administrator. But at this point, let's just kind of stick it to the technical aspects. So if you go onto the internet and you pull up County of Sutter. You then can look at the Board of Supervisors page. Should be kind of front and center, easy to get to. And then from there, you're going to look at agendas, board agendas. And so anyway, just wanted to, I had never described kind of where this is at. So that's where this PDF document, Adobe PDF, is located. And you can pull that up. And towards the end of this very long Board of Supervisors meeting is the staff report that I'm referring to now, because it's item, I think, 25 on the agenda. So let's talk a little bit about it. My most significant concern with this is the lack of understanding as to exactly what the financial consequences are of the approval. So generally speaking, staff goes to the board. Andy, you know this very, very well. Goes to the board, goes to you and says, hey, we're doing this over here, or we would like to do this over here. This is what we think it'll cost. This is, whatever operationally is important, whatever long-term financial or fiscal consequences are, you want to get as much information as you can, and then you make a decision one way or the other, you and your 4 colleagues. And this is a unique deal here, this staff report, because unlike pretty much every staff report I've ever come across in the county, this one, it has fiscal and financial impacts to it, but the staff report itself kind of inconsistently doesn't even provide for the board to actually approve the spending of money.
There's no amount?
Well, they actually do list amounts. There are numbers in here, some, a lot that I would like to see that aren't in here, but they do include, for example, $1.2 million of CDBG, which is Community Development Block Grant, about 1.3 million of that money, but it does not ask for the approval to spend the money. So again, it's a weird thing, because it's like, wait, approve this, but we're going to come back to you later with money. But we're going to tell you what the money is, but we're not asking you to approve that money. We're going to come back later and ask for you to approve either that exact same money or more money, but it's unknown. So I'm trying to read between the lines here, and I'm thinking, is this a way to kind of get the foot in the door with here's a concept, here's a plan, and then once you've got that approved, I'll come back later with the numbers. I'm unsure. It's unclear.
How many people fit in that room that they're in?
Gosh, I would say with folks standing up as well, I would say probably around 100.
Okay, Tea Party.
Maybe 120.
I know you're listening. Show up. I mean, yeah. Okay.
Let your voice be heard, but even before you show up, so that you can show up with credibility and all of that, is read the staff report. Don't just take my word for it on the radio or anybody else. Go in, look at the staff report, read the words, and try to understand what they're seeking and what they're going for, and then develop your questions. That's my approach, right? You read it like a contract, then you ask your questions or provide your concerns, and then you move on. That's exactly what I perceive to be my role here in county government. Is I'm a certified public accountant. I worked pretty hard to get that. I went through the training. I cut my teeth in public accounting. And all the while, all of that time, it's all about supporting your client and serving your client. They're the one paying your bill. So here I'm in government now, and it's all about supporting and serving my client. And it's a twofold kind of bifurcated client. My client is, one, every single taxpayer of Sutter County. And then two, it's also the collaboration that I work with staff, right? So I kind of have to work with staff, provide them with my feedback, my concerns, at the same time be always have fidelity to the taxpayers and what they sent me here for.
You also answer to the people who aren't in the taxpayer bracket, because unfortunately people don't realize that probably 50 or 60% of the people don't pay taxes.
That's a great point, and you could further even say not. So that's a great point, Andy. And I struggle sometimes. Do I say residents? Do I say citizens? Do I say taxpayers? Do I say the voting taxpayers? Do I say the voting residents? Anyway, yeah, it's the
residents that you took your oath to maintain that relationship, that business, that fiduciary relationship.
Right. Well, so continuing on with some questions, like I have a question about this funding source. So the funding source is community development block grant, as I stated, and that's generally speaking a one-time money kind of thing. Grants can be recurring in nature, or they can be one-time. And when you have to continually reapply, generally we conclude that that's a one-time kind of grant. If the reapplication is a slam dunk each and every time, we may say, well, we do have to apply, but it's really a recurring revenue source that we can pretty much bank each time. Well, this is the former is the case here. CDBG is not a recurring revenue source. It's generally speaking a one-time revenue source. So with that, can we spend this one-time revenue source, which is in the staff report, they've identified $709,000 and an additional $550,000 that they're going to seek and apply for. And just a quick note on the first one, that actually was a higher number at the beginning of the week. And what happened was I was not included on an email from the county administrator. He sent out an email to say 50 people, a lot of department heads, a lot of people outside of the county on his new staff report. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, he dropped me off of that email. Well, I came to get the email anyway the very next day, and so I started looking into it, and the first thing we look at is, well, this number you've identified in the staff report, are you going to seek a budget amendment for it, and go through my office like would be expected for every other department head, including the county administrator? And the response was really surprising. It was, no, we're not going to get a budget amendment. We're just going to go to the board and get this concept approved. We'll come back for budget and money later. But nevertheless, they put numbers in the report. Okay, so it's confusing for me. It's kind of the first time I've had to deal with this sort of thing. But so then the second question is, all right, well, okay, let's just look at the staff report then and ask questions about that. This $709,000 is CDBG money. That seems inflated. How are you coming up with that number? Anyway, we worked through it. It took a couple of days, but the number that they originally had was more than this, is what I'm saying.
There was a key word that you used that that caught my ear. Applying for.
Applying for, yes.
Okay, we don't have the check in the bank.
We don't.
It's not cleared.
That's right.
Okay. I think for 4 years we're applying for Tiger grants that the happy days Democrats just go, wow, we're applying for it.
Right.
Like they're going to get it. Okay.
Right. It's been in the past, it's been actually a criticism out of that office of other departments where, hey, if you're going to apply for the grant, that's great, but you need to apply for it first, get it, and then come back to us with your recommendation to spend it. And so this is another case where it's a do as I say, not as I do, perhaps.
Is this a chicken and egg question?
We could go down that, but I would say no, because it really should be that government doesn't spend money until they have the money. But you know what? If that were true, we wouldn't have a $150 million unfunded pension liability or a $100 trillion Social Security and Medicare unfunded liabilities, right? But we've already spent all of that money ahead of time for our children and grandchildren, so they can pay for it.
I understand. Our politicians, and I'm reading on the history of the Social Security, they knew when it was implemented that they were going to spend that trust fund.
Well,
never mind.
Yeah, our government. We'll go down that rabbit
hole.
hole. But our government has definitely turned a little bit up as down these days. So back to it. A few more questions just on the first page. I looked at the CDBG guidebook, which is a long PDF document that contains a lot of useful information in layman's terms as to how you implement CDBG. And I haven't, here's the question is, they've identified some salary, I'll just say staff costs, not get away from salary or wages, and just say staff costs for the operation itself of this program, of this halfway house between homelessness at the river bottoms and hopefully a better life for these folks. So what is it that allows this one-time CDBG money to be spent on staff costs? And are these staff costs into perpetuity? Are they just for the 3 years that it's specified in the document? But we're talking about one-time money being spent on staff costs to operate this facility. And I'm just asking, how is that? How are we able to do it? It may be that we are, but I haven't seen that from my quick research. And because I was kind of left out of the conversation, I'm having to play catch up here, which is unfortunate. And I really hope that in the future this doesn't happen like it did again. But nevertheless, that's one of my basic questions: is can we even spend that money on what it says in the staff report that the CAO is recommending? And again, it's not for administrative costs. Okay, we're not talking staffing to administer the program, or even what I saw was in the guidebook is code enforcement. You can actually have a code enforcement program that's funded by CDBG, and that can pay for those code enforcement officers. There's a clear example of, yes, you can spend it on folks' salary and wages. But I do not see that at all for other kinds of operational programming facilities or operations. So,
Who's the chair?
Chairman of the board?
Yeah.
Supervisor Whitaker, District 4.
Okay. I would think he would have a few of these same questions.
Well, we'll see. Tuesday might just be a real charged deal. Okay, so then if we go, that was all pretty much the very first recommendation in the staff report. I'm going to repeat just one last time. It's really tough for me to, as auditor, as your financial eyes and ears, to read this first item on the recommendation and know that I've been told by the CAO that is not in any way him seeking approval to spend the money. It's just him, I guess, making sure he's tracking correctly with the 5 supervisors. And but one little interesting to me, it's a little bit of a inconsistency in that statement of, hey, I'm not seeking a budget amendment. I'm just seeking, thought consistency with you all. Well, if you go to the 5th page, the very top, it says, if the board approves repurposing the sheriff training facility to a long-term homeless shelter, staff will dedicate the next 5 months to make this project happen on schedule. So, okay. But if you're not today or Tuesday night seeking the spending of any money, how can you really be confident that you'll be able to spend the next 5 months to make this project happen on schedule? I mean, you haven't even gotten a penny approved, and you're stating this end game is already going to come to be. I find that very difficult to see in government, where it's appropriate to go forth with so many questions, with such lack of understanding as to what this program and project really is. I don't understand the timing or the expediency with which this needs to move. We've been talking about it apparently for the last 6 months. Why Tuesday night? Why does this have to move forward? And look, I'm the auditor controller. I am not a board of supervisor, or I should just say I'm not a supervisor. I do not make this call. I'm simply asking questions. Okay, and I understand that. And I don't want anybody listening to this to think that I have some power that I don't. I do not.
They're actually saying they're going to accomplish those goals during the 5 months.
Right.
With what?
With what?
Okay, from where? Because if they haven't applied for the grant yet, then you have to transfer something in the budget to be able to.
Right. And I can't transfer that money until it has been approved. So, yeah.
I'm sure they will.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm sure they'll come back with money, but my point is let's tie them together. Let's have the words and thoughts and program ideas and recommendations tied to the money, and then it's kind of one plan, one movement forward, and everybody's on the same page, and everybody can ask all the questions that they feel appropriate and necessary in order to understand and to vote on this. So that's kind of where I'm at now. I'm just going to keep moving down and ask a couple more questions. So like if we go to the 5th item. Monitor Feather River water levels, local weather, overall conditions within river bottom areas to determine if temporary measures will be necessary during inclement circumstances. And then this says, including use of local motel, hotel vouchers, warming centers, etc. Warming center. Okay. So how much does that cost? How much does the motel, hotel vouchers, the warming centers? We haven't even talked at all about the enormous amount of cost associated with the development of this staff report. So if we talk about the fact that they've really been working on it since the beginning of the year, and included in the staff report is the fact that every single county department head has either been provided an opportunity to be involved or has in fact been involved. And so you start to add up that brain trust power that has been involved with weekly meetings for months and months. And I'll tell y'all that is millions of dollars, and that is not even calculated or shown anywhere. That's just money that it's all opportunity cost money. Instead of doing other things, they spend a whole lot of it on this homeless thing. So anyway, I just want to, because I'm a finance guy, I talk about all the costs associated with these things. At least I try to.
Well, I know with the 14 Forward, the funds allocated were discussed a wee bit.
Beforehand?
Because where were we going to get it? And we still have questions of where we're going to continue to get it. So we've got a Tri-County Juvenile Hall that's going right next door, and I honestly don't believe a homeless shelter should be close to a live construction facility.
Right.
But that's just one man's opinion, so we'll see how it goes.
Well, and to shed a little light for folks that haven't been paying attention to this issue, the non-financial considerations from the community that I was hearing at the last board meeting were things like, hey, this is right by the Little League fields, and we play baseball over there and or softball, whatever, and our children are there, and we've already been having lots of issues with the homeless breaking into our cars and or interacting with us badly, and but now you're gonna have this permanent sheltering right next door, and they're going to feel even more emboldened to, for example, come down and watch our children play or harass or whatever. And it's not to say that every one of them is a harasser or anything like that. Please don't misunderstand. I'm just saying that's the concern that was espoused is we play ball there. Other concerns were, again, these are non-financial kind of, they probably have a financial component, but I'm just talking, there's concerns about, hey, this is an airport. And are these folks going to be stealing copper from the airport like they do so often, or not just homeless, but like folks steal often as copper because the price copper has been very high in the last decade. So
if they're looking to close that place, I think they made a good plan for this, because you have a plane that's costing me $150,000 to buy, or I don't care if it's $50,000 to buy. They're very fragile. And some bozo climbing, just saying, hey, well, I wanted to look and see, and I climb up on the wing and tip the thing and break things. And it's thousands of dollars to work on those things. If you think a tune-up is expensive on your car, try and get your plugs changed on a Cessna 182.
Well, and even if they don't break something, I understand that the mere fact that they broke into the hangar would possibly create a situation where they have to get that plane recertified to fly.
You have Homeland Security right there at that. Once they cross that fence, they're on federal land, and yeah.
So the proximity, of course, with the airport presents all sorts of aviation and other kinds of legal questions and risks, concerns. More. Let's talk about more risks, more financial impacts that are not clearly identified. And again, I always like to say to give the county administrator the benefit of the doubt on this. It's difficult to come up with estimates. It often is. Sometimes you have very little to go by, but I nevertheless believe that it's incumbent upon we fiscal people in government to produce and provide every single bit of fiscal and financial understanding to not only the supervisors, but the public at large when we're asking to spend their money. So we're not spending a private, company's money or shareholder money. We're spending taxpayers' money that was taken from them before they ever had any opportunity to even pay it. It's taken out of their paycheck. You have a duty to spend that so incredibly wisely, and do not be flippant about that money. And I take that very, very seriously because I understand our country, the spending is the core problem with everything in this country, in my opinion. If we spend like drunken sailors all day, every day.
There is a difference between a drunken sailor and us. The drunken sailor spends his own money.
Okay. There you go.
And it's like Reagan said. It's not that we don't have enough taxes. It's we spend too much. We have enough taxes. We just spend too much.
Well, so that's That's actually a wonderful little segue, because my position as your financial eyes and ears, and again, from a non-policy making standpoint, I know that I don't make policy. I'm just here making comments, really, and providing, where necessary, statutory reports or statutory communications. So what I would like to know is, or share with you all, is that we have a very limited amount of reserves in Sutter County. I'm sure Yuba County and all of the other counties, pretty much, especially we rural counties, we have a very limited amount of money to spend. And it's not to say that none of it can be on this project or a different. That's obviously the board's call. That's what they were elected to do. That's the decision authority they have and solely have. But my position and what my role is to make sure that I've properly informed them before they make the decision as to, let's say, the consequences of the decision, whether known or estimated, as well as the opportunity costs of deciding to spend the money this way instead of this other way. And so the two things I've talked about here on the radio with you, Andy, that I think are the highest benefit dollars spent. That is, they produce the biggest bang on the dollar, or bang for the dollar spent. And they're probably in this order, although it's tough. But it's facility consolidation and pension and OPEB liability funding. And I know that I sound like a broken record. I get it, but I'm not here to make friends. I'm not here to do any kind of honey potion. I'm here to tell you exactly what I believe to be the biggest concerns. And when you have somewhere between 130 and 150 million dollar pension unfunded liability just in little old Sutter County, that is by far a factor of 10. That means you can multiply the next highest number by 10. And you still won't even get up to the unfunded pension liability. So if you look at our balance sheet, which is our statement of position today, it is so heavily weighted on the pension. My point is that there's a huge amount of benefit of attacking that liability today.
Yeah, but it's not just you. It's not just Sutter County.
Right.
It's the entire state that is ignoring the 800-pound gorilla on the couch. And it's just it's like Marin County, and I just showed you that there's next 7 years. This is CalPERS itself bulletin. I think this came out. Cities face 7 years of growing CalPERS costs. We can't afford it now. How can we afford 7? And the thing about it is the homeless. Again, I have empathy with him, but my feeling, and I'm not welcome in a lot of circles because of it, is that 90% of it is their choice where they're at. And they seem to think that they have a right to enslave the taxpayers with their livelihood. But it's just there's a key word called transparency. I think that's maybe a little shy.
Well, and to some extent remains to be seen, but thus far I've been pretty disappointed in the way this has gone in the last month because of the fact that it just seems like we're trying to get it done, not trying to get it done right. And there's that wonderful saying of why is there always enough time to fix it instead of getting it done correctly in the beginning, right? That is, whenever you have a brand new program, something never done before, and you simply just kind of try to get it done at all costs, to me it reeks of problems. Because what if your recommendation is so strong and so unassailable, why do you have to rush it through? Why can't you sit there and debate and discuss and persuade reasonably with good arguments, with reasoned arguments? That is how you move forward very credibly, and you get buy-in. Folks that are complaining about XYZ, you listen to them, you understand what it is that is really important to them, and then you take what's reasonable from that and you change and make better.
Yeah.
Right? You don't just ram through.
Well, it took me years to stop the emergency situations. We would have emergency items on the agenda that they would ram through, and it just I figured if they weren't bleeding and at the door of the emergency room, then they didn't need to really run it through. And I don't think we've had an emergency one as far as in a couple of weeks, months.
Well, well, that is great. It's certainly since Orville, in that wonderful problem we've been dealing with at the.
While I got a chance here,
Yes.
I would like to thank all of our staff and all of our elected officials and the entire Yuba County organization for putting together the emergency response centers. And CalPERS and FEMA normally have mobile offices. They do not reside in offices, but because we have the infrastructure and we have the personnel that are helping them get everything done, FEMA is still here, Cal OES is still here, and SBA is still here, and it's unheard of for them to land any place. So I would like to thank.
Andy, can I echo that? I worked with a couple of folks from Yuba County's emergency staff. I went to an emergency operations training conducted by the California California Training Center, and those folks in Yuba County's emergency team are some of the best I think in the state. They are so professional and intelligent and learned and thoughtful and diligent. I mean, anyway, the response has been amazing. They're an amazing team.
When the fires went off, we weren't expecting anything. Head of OES was in Yosemite in training. Mr. Bendorf got everything together, put the emergency center up, staffed it, and by the time they got back, it was up and functioning right then, because they had on call different department heads, different key people right there that were cross trained on all the different organizations or different places, and they just put them in. I was sitting there making copies, and I did my best to stay out of the way because they know what they're doing, and it was just amazing to watch it all happen.
They really do, and having been in the Orville, gone through the Orville incident and being in the EOC, the Emergency Operations Center in Sutter County, I can really underscore the quality of the emergency response in Yuba County. Great staff.
I think we're going to have to go to at least a commercial for you and give you.
Good morning. Good morning. So back on this homeless staff report, going to the board Tuesday next week. I want to be real clear with my position from a financial and fiscal standpoint. I just feel underwhelmed by the amount of transparency in the report. It's not that I, from a personal standpoint, have any particular bone to pick or anything like that. It's not that. We have a very limited amount of resources, and I want to make sure that what we're going to become on the hook for is fully vetted and understood by the board before they make the decision. So if you get the foot in the door and you become on the hook for something and it's not properly disclosed to you ahead of time before you get that foot in the door, that to me is a real problem in government. We need to be super diligent with how we spend each and every dollar, and especially when it's something new. I want to talk for just a minute about the Chevron project from a couple of years ago in Sutter County. And not because I want to make anybody uncomfortable out there, but because I want the taxpayers to be aware of what happened and how I don't want to see this happen again. In that case, the Chevron project, that was actually approved before I came into office while my predecessor was in office. But the biggest problem there, in a few words, was that they ignored and left out the auditor controller. And it's not to say the auditor controller is the most important this or that or anything like that. It's not. But it is to say that there is a role, a specific codified statutory role for the auditor controller, for the treasurer tax collector in the remission of all monies. Yes.
You're the guardian of the funds.
That's right. And I'm elected by the people for a reason. I'm not a finance director, as I think the CIO wishes I were. He keeps telling me, I'm used to finance directors, and I say I'm not that.
Yeah.
That's not my role. And
Right.
if I don't do an auditor controller role, I'm going to be held accountable for breaching statute. So from that perspective, I just want to see real thoughtful deliberation about how we spend these monies. And when you're going to create a new program such as a new homeless center, and you've got in the staff report, which I do appreciate, some more long-term ideas and forward thinking on it, like, hey, we're going to then build a 42-unit affordable housing development project, and I consider that to be very permanent. So what's the cost there? How's that going to be run? Is it going to be federal dollars or local
the same
dollars?
Location?
No, different.
Okay.
It says permanent supportive services located at 448 Garden Highway, which is on the other side of the airport, closer to Yuba City, I guess, and not close to the river bottom. So what is the permanent costs associated with this activity? That is, what are the long-term fiscal consequences and costs associated with it? And if it's an impact to the general fund, which we have very limited resources for, I think that should be disclosed and considered before any approval is made. And the low-hanging fruit, what I call low-hanging fruit in Sutter County, meaning where we can spend dollars and have the most bang for our buck, are the two that I talked about earlier: facility consolidation and pension pre-funding. And the reason why I say the first one, facility consolidation, is because we're so dang spread out in Sutter County, 26 or 28 facilities, for less than 1,000 people. It's incredibly non-efficient or not efficient.
The idea of using the Kmart Center for all your offices is just absolutely a stroke of brilliance.
Right. Think about all of the administrative support staff that we can kind of consolidate into one area, not one bathroom, but instead of 26 or 28 restroom facilities, you've got just a few. Yeah. So all of that is a way to reduce expenditures, as you were talking about earlier with Reagan. Reduce expenditures and or increase revenues. I don't like increased revenues because that generally is leading towards new taxes or more taxes. Right. I like the idea of let's do more with less. Supervisor Solinger often would say that, or has said that at the podium. Do more with less.
Well, when you're in a deep hole, first thing you do is stop digging.
Right.
And that consolidation is just, I don't know why it's taken so long to think of that. I mean, I don't know who thought of that, but they should definitely get a recognition from the Board of Supervisors.
Well, without naming names, I'll just say there's been a core group of about 4 or 5 individuals in the county that has been working on the Health and Human Services consolidation at that facility since literally the second or third month I got into office. It was in the end of 2014. So we've been working on that particular site for over 3 years now. And a lot of the slowness was not government. I'll actually be honest with you. It was Sears Holding, Kmart, okay. The parent company. Yeah. So, but we finally got in with them in a way that they were able to move on that.
That's going to save you tons of money.
Yes.
And, I mean, it's like our Packard facility down there. I mean, we had to move because of the mold problem in the mall. But still, I mean, new facilities, single level. It's a very easy facility with lots of parking and all the accompanying accoutrements that.
Right.
It's just veterans services to everything, and it's also a voting center for us too. But,
maybe I could throw out one accolade to the one of the electeds that's in that committee, and the biggest charging force for this consolidation, that would be Assessor Retzloff.
Wow.
So Assessor Todd Retzloff has been, I'd say, a pretty amazing force in this real property negotiations realm, and he's brought a lot of energy and experience and passion to it. So real kudos to him for doing this for the taxpayers.
But
truly,
department heads, for the sake of the employees, it's just an easier place to go to, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And one of the silly things, I say silly just because it's a little bit touchy-feely, but I've been saying personally from day one that when we consolidate facilities, that in and of itself is going to be a major morale booster to the county. And you say, well, why? Okay, well, the easy one is because they're going to have maybe a newer, nicer facility. Some of the folks in our county literally work in mold-infested environment. Okay, it's horrible, and it's a health risk for them, and that needs to end right now. So that is obviously a morale booster where that we get them into a healthier, cleaner environment where they can have a healthy working environment. But the other major, and this is where it gets a little touchy-feely, is that when we have a single central area where folks can go and eat lunch, for example, and they can see folks from other departments and say, hey, Betty, how are you doing? That is a wonderful thing for our employees. Right now, under 20, whatever the number is, but that number of facilities, we're all spread out, we're all siloed, and it creates these fiefdoms. And you start having, well, that's my staff, or no, that's your, no, that we're one organization and we need to be a team. And so the more you can put people in proximity with each other just on a day-to-day basis, they're going to generally move closer together. And that's going to produce a better product and service for our constituency.
I hate to say I'm spoiled. Bendorf does an extremely good job, and he's been here ever since I've been a supervisor, and it's just amazing the camaraderie and the feeling you have working for Yuba County. It's you go to the employee recognition lunch, and it's just everybody's together, everybody's pulling, everybody's rowing in the same direction. It's just amazing. People who start work for us don't leave that much. If you look, the attrition rate in Yuba County now is not that big.
Well, you have talked about the longevity aspect in the past, but
well,
that does help.
Yes. Well, that's actually being phased out. That was phased out, I think, 2013.
Mm-hmm.
So we're working on that. But anyhow, just transparency and the more your public is involved, the better you can look yourself in the mirror and know that you've done the right thing. Because when you walk the streets, it's really pretty bad when you got to look over your shoulders every now and then to make sure you're not going to get run over.
Right.
But can I put a plug in here for the Hmong Cultural Center today at 10 o'clock at Sam Brennan Park on 810 Gray Avenue. Again, this is the Hmong Cultural Celebration at Sam Brennan Park. And these are our allies and the lost generations, and it really would be nice if people could stop by and give them a thanks. And that's one of the things that we haven't done recently is thank people for doing that. And Blue Star Moms Holiday Care Package event Saturday, November 4th at the American Legion or the VFW 948. We know it as VFW Hall. 1703 corner of Elm and Highway 70. Nancy, 632-8531, Tri-County Blue Star Moms. Okay. This public service event. Okay.
Yeah, so we've got about 5 minutes, Andy.
Yeah.
And
I'll back up.
No. I love both of those, and we need to always. I feel like the shows I appreciate. I listen to some talk shows and things, and I love and always want to thank our police, fire, emergency personnel, our men and women in military or in uniform, I should say. Thank you so much for all that you do. This is a trying time for some of those folks, as far as some of the cultural sort of oddness that's occurring, whether it's the national anthem sort of thing. But you've got to understand, those folks I just mentioned, that you have the silent majority behind you at all times. We are here. We are fighting, whether it's in our pocketbook by not supporting organizations like the NFL that have been very slow to respect our flag and national anthem, or otherwise. We are behind you.
Well, we've got also a talent contest, kind of like The Voice. Our version of The Voice is happening at one of our middle schools in Olivehurst. And look up Linda Lyons to find out when it is. But at 6 o'clock, they're going to have auditions, open mics. So if you really want to see, people say, how can we get kids' attention? Go there to this school at 6 o'clock. You'll find out how that happens. Because if you look at The Voice or you look at this program, you'll find kids. You'll see their eyes light up. You'll see their enthusiasm. You'll see quite a change in their attitude. None of this chip on my shoulder. This is I want to shine as a singer.
Yes.
And it's just I can't stress enough how important the electives are for that. Okay.
So, Andy, if you don't mind, I just want to end with, since I spoke a lot about this homeless staff report coming to the board Tuesday, and I just want to say a couple final things. One, is I would love to see folks get involved with your community. There's really little excuse anymore. It's going to be live stream on Facebook. It's live on the county's website. It's a couple, say, 10-second delay, but you can watch it from home if you can't make it to the building. Make it to the building. It's over on 2nd Street by the old courthouse across the street. It's called the Hall of Records. And it'll be at 3 p.m. Tuesday this coming up week. You know, I'm not saying don't do anything. That's not my call or anything like that. What I'm saying is fully tell us the plan. Understand and analyze the fiscal or financial consequences. Explain them. You don't have to be perfect. Trust me. Estimates are appropriate. They're not just appropriate, they're necessary, because you can't be spending other people's money without providing some idea of how it's going to be, where it's coming from, and the justification for it. So let's just kind of slow that down, get that understood, and then move forward with however you want to do it. That's your prerogative, right? But can't we fully be transparent through this process? It's brand new to us.
Well, I have a saying that we get the government we deserve.
Yes.
And that's unfortunately, if you're not, 60s nailed it. If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And we have people that go through life that haven't said, they haven't voted. And excuse me, I used to get thrown out of places. I say, if you haven't voted, shut up.
Thank you.
All right.